Hi, everyone, and welcome to journey number 16. And today we have Trevor Jay on the podcast. And Trevor is a beer rep for Blind Man Brewing. And we've actually known each other for a couple of years now, mostly professionally. And I'm really excited for this conversation. We were chatting just before to, kind of go into a different realm and go a little bit deeper and, ask some questions that I don't know the answer to. So I guess, first of all, Trevor, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. It's a good day so far.
Nice.
Sun's shining. Can't complain.
Awesome. And I guess just to start off, can you kind of just give us some context on who you are, right? Of where'd you grow up? What kind of things did you do? Did you go to school? What kind of things have you done for work? Just kind of whatever comes to mind, like what kind of kid you were, anything like that.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I could talk an hour about just all those questions. I live in Calgary now, as you know, but I was born and raised in Lacombe, little town, about 10,000 people, just north of Red Deer. I was born and raised there, and then I moved to Red Deer when I was 20 or 21. I played music. I played all the sports as a kid. I sucked at all of them, but they were super fun. I think I just wanted to hang out more than anything else. And then I kind of picked up a guitar and realized sports are not my thing and music is. And I'd been dabbling with piano and guitar and stuff most of my life growing up, and then bought one and played in shitty punk bands in junior high and high school, and then played in a somewhat serious band while graduating high school and a couple of years after, and put out an album and toured a tiny little bit, and then moved to Red Deer to get out of Lacombe, because most people go right from Lacombe to Edmonton and Calgary, or they stay there forever. But some people do the Red Deer stop before they really leave. So I went as far as Red Deer, played music for a while, and then was in a band I thought was gonna maybe go somewhere, and then broke up pretty quickly. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm sick of relying on other people for this kind of shit. So I actually got into stand-up comedy for a brief time. And some comedy writing and a tiny bit of improv. And then I decided I should move to Toronto to try and do something about that. So I did that when I was 23, I think. Lived in Toronto for a few years. Well, 3 years. Did absolutely nothing related to comedy when I was there. Just kind of had some savings from a casino job I had, and just hung out for 3 years and had fun, basically. And then realized that I was never going to pay bills with comedy, and found another passion, I guess, in craft beer, and heard about the program at Olds College and applied to that the day before the deadline, not thinking I would get in. And they liked my cover letter, I guess, because I had nothing on the quote unquote resume or whatever. So yeah, got in, moved home, did 2 years of Olds, the brewmaster program, decided partway through I didn't want to be a brewer. But wanted to stay in the industry, but finished out the program after debating dropping out like a loser, and then didn't be a loser. I finished, and then had an unreal opportunity to move to Calgary and work for my hometown brewery, which, all bias aside, before I was an employee, has been my favorite brewery since I first tried their beer. So it's there's the short version of my life story, I guess.
That's super cool and so interesting too. And it's it's interesting because for me, I was definitely more on the sports side. I never really dabbled in music at all, right? And other than listening to it, of course. And I'm just kind of curious, what did you, and I don't even know if you remember this, I don't know how old you were, but what was kind of the difference? You said you realized sports weren't for you, but you kind of picked up a guitar and it just made sense in your mind. Was it just a feeling? Was it just you found yourself, gravitating towards it more and more, and feeling more like it, it was more enjoyable and less of, a job as maybe sports did? And the reason I ask is, I'm very curious about passions and people's passions and how they find it. So.
Yeah, I think for me, it was I bought my first electric guitar in grade 8. And that was also, I bought it in grade 8, and then it was in grade 9, I was playing bantam football. Football is my sport. I still love watching sports. And playing for fun, but I've never been an athletic person at all, really. But like I said, always enjoyed playing, but just never really excelled, I guess. It's never been like a natural, I'm not naturally coordinated or like athletic, I guess. Whereas I've been picking up tunes on like picking up melodies on a piano since like as soon as I was tall enough to touch the keys, basically. So it was a matter of just like I was better at it, I guess. So I had to work a little bit less at it. The main thing that like did it for me, I broke my wrist the first game I played in football. I broke my wrist. And the doctor was like, no more football. And I was like, oh, whatever. I'm sick of running
Yeah.
anyways. And then he was like, and no more guitar. I was like, fuck. Like that kind of put it in perspective for me. It was like, cool. I don't give a shit about sports. I'm devastated I can't play my guitar for the next like month or whatever it was. So
Yeah. Very cool. Very interesting too. No. And you know, the other one that I'm interested about is, you know, the trip to Toronto, and you said you ended up not really doing a ton with comedy. And, you know, I'm curious if, you know, like when you look back on it, have you been able to identify why that was, of, you know, having going from that pull to, you know, move across the country to pursue comedy, and once you get there, you know, finding that, you know, you didn't put, you know, necessarily the effort, or I don't know if it was effort, or I don't know if it's just you didn't feel like doing it. I don't know what it was, but, you know, have you reflected on that at all and figured out, you know, how you went from committing to moving there, and then once you got there found that it wasn't really, you know, necessarily what you wanted to do?
yeah, I thought about that a lot. I basically, I think in hindsight, I I just wanted a reason to leave small town central Alberta more than anything else. It wasn't like I had this dying passion to do comedy. Like I'd done it a couple times and it was really fun. And I've always just been like a like not quite class clown, but like been a joker kind of. So I didn't have many other skills. So I was like, oh, I'll give this a shot, I guess. Um, and it largely was just I wanted to leave small town central Alberta. And like, don't get me wrong, I love my hometown. I didn't appreciate it as much then as I do now. Honestly, it was a wicked place to grow up, but it's still small town central Alberta, kind of hyper conservative, back ass words from I think the way I think. So I just wanted to, and I've always just loved cities. Honestly, I remember even coming to Calgary as a kid for like a weekend for a tournament or something, or even just our parents would just take it to the city just to spend a weekend out of town kind of thing. I just always liked the energy that cities have. And I had two of my best friends lived had been out there for a little while already. They were in two of the bands that I was in. They're still playing music. Shout out to Jojo O in the Woods. Give them a look up on the old Google box. But they had a room for me out there. They had a house with a room with my own bathroom, and to live with them and a couple other people, and kind of ease into it. They just kind of posed the opportunity, and I'd been out to visit them already once. I just loved it. Obviously, you don't move immediately to a place after like one trip, but
Yeah.
I kind of did anyways.
Yeah.
So, and I'd already had I'd done stand up a handful of times. I took a screenwriting course at Grant MacEwan in Edmonton, and just kind of figured I would go there and network and figure it out as I went. And then I went there and like started to network and realized that the comedy scene, and it's not comedy scene in general. I think it's just the few encounters I had. It's kind of toxic. Like you talk, like most comedians are notoriously like either hate themselves or have some demons, and like they use comedy as a way to kind of cope with that. And I in my head I was like, the further I go down trying to be a comedian, I'm gonna end up trying to drive myself crazy to come up with material. And I was crazy enough already at the time, I decided. So I just kind of that. And I read there's a book, I forget who the author, but it's just a collection of interviews with comedy writers and comedians. And the one piece of advice, again, don't even remember which chapter it was and who the guy that said it was. But it was like, what's one piece of advice you would give to people that want to be comedy writers? And it was, if you can do literally anything else on earth and be happy, do that, because this will destroy you.
Yeah.
And it was just like, yeah, you're probably right. But I had yeah, I had quite a bit of savings saved up from, I worked as a slot attendant at a casino. So basically, if people would win over a certain amount of money, I would go and pay them cash instead of it paying out on their ticket. So it was, the tips were stupid when the economy was still good, and Red Deer still had a lot of oil business and stuff around it. So I had a lot of money saved up that I didn't work that hard for. So it was like, cool, I'm just going to go hang out in a fun city for a couple of years. So just kind of liked the city and met some cool people, and yeah, decided to stick it out until I went broke, basically.
It's so interesting too that you bring that up of, because I've definitely heard that a lot of times, comedians, there is, a tendency for them to have some demons or, just some like underlying things that they're struggling with. And, it goes into something that I'm really passionate about, just mental health in general. And, like over the past year and a half, really diving into that world and, you know, facing my own demons and, figuring out, kind of why I am the way that I am. And, starting to look at those and, I always call them like bring them to light, right? Instead of like ignoring them and keeping them in the dark, bring them to light, looking at them, figuring them out, working through them. And, I'm just kind of curious, what your, relationship with mental health is. And, like, have you had any big wins or losses or what's your experience with it?
Depends on the day, honestly. I think that's probably a pretty common answer. But it's, yeah, I mean, I definitely fall into that category of being someone who, I'm sure my comedic tendencies come from, some kind of, mental lack, I guess, or just a place of, yeah, I'm sure there's some darkness that's just like, make people laugh and it'll be better kind of thing. Yeah, I absolutely have had my struggles with mental health. It's been a up and down battle for sure. I remember being like at one point in my life with, it was right before final exams in grade 12. And right before, like, we were recording our like album, I guess, the band that was like the most serious, that like put in some work into that album and stuff. It was, I had dumb like high school problems with, girls and friends and stuff. And then the stress of high school exams and the stress of, trying to record an album while you're doing all this other shit. I drove myself nuts. Like, it got a little dark for a little while. I was a moody teen, and then graduated, and it was fine. Hindsight, I'm laughing my ass off. I was like shedding tears over the tiny amount of stress in the grand scheme, but you don't know when you're in high school. And then it was, it got, I think I've always struggled a little bit with like weight and body image for sure. It's always a weird sentence, but I used to be this weight. Like, I lost about 80 pounds at one point in my life. Which was, it was literally a girl that I worked with that I like went to a bar with and liked, and we were like getting flirty and like we started kissing and stuff, and then she stopped, and I was like, is everything okay? And she's like, well, you're kind of fat. And I was like, cool. Fuck you. Like,
Yeah.
Super nice person, obviously. And then B, honestly, in hindsight, it lit a fire under my ass. I was like, yeah, she's right. Like, as much as it was like a dick thing to say, she was totally right. And like, that was a reason why I wasn't getting the attention from girls that, I wanted. So I at one point, a friend of mine is a personal trainer. So I reached out to him, and it was right before I moved to Toronto. So I lost about 25, 30 pounds before I moved, and then lost the rest like while I was there. And then it was also the first time that like I'd been exercising regularly in my life since like when I was playing sports as a kid, basically, which was awesome. Moving to a new city is a city of 100,000 to a city of 5 million was pretty overwhelming, even though I enjoyed it a lot, but it was definitely came with some stresses. So I turned that stress into exercise, which was awesome. So I was able to lose a bunch of weight, and then kind of struggled with just how differently people were treating me strictly just because I look slightly different. And if you're noticing, or if this is going on video, this light in my kitchen just flickers. It's a ghost, I'm pretty sure. Don't worry about it. But yeah, it was a pretty messed up thing to just kind of think about, and to go home, like to come home for Christmas or in summer and see people I haven't seen in a couple of years, and just to see how differently they treated me just because I was 80 pounds lighter. Like that was it. Everything else was totally the same. So it just kind of made me, I mean, it was nice. Like it was a hard thing to be mad at. Like all of a sudden I'm getting more positive attention from people. That's great. But then the stress of going back to school and moving back across the country, all those stresses, and apathy and laziness on my part. I stopped working out. I stopped eating as healthy as I was, and I essentially drink beer for a living now, and drank beer, you know, in brewmaster school. Shocking, there's some beer involved. So I've gained that weight back, and to go from being one way, and then literally just your physical appearance changing, and then feeling like you have more opportunities and more positivity in your life just surrounding you because of the way you look, and then going back to the way you were before, and seeing people literally flip in the way that they like approach you and treat you, that's a mind fuck. It's absolutely something that I struggle with for sure.
Yeah.
Like I get that that's the way the world is. I'm a little shallow myself. Everybody is. But to experience it and overthink it, that's another, I overthink everything. So on a dark day or like a high anxiety day, I'll one kind of bad, completely unrelated thing I'll start here, and then I have too much time by myself to think about it and overanalyze it and everything, and then I end up here and mentally way low. So yeah, that's kind of the main one.
Yeah, I appreciate that a ton. And first of all, just like thank you for sharing that story, and opening up about like my body image issues was one of the toughest things that I had to do, right? And I think like I never necessarily had kind of a one moment that I can point to, but for me it was started when I was very young. Like, I remember in elementary school, like there are some kids that would bully me about like being chubby or being bigger or whatever it is, and like I internalized that for the rest of my life, and not realizing how much that affected me. And because it started at such a young age, it just became truth in my mind, right? In my mind, it was like I'm fat, I'm chubby, I'm whatever, right? And became highly critical of myself, and like especially my body, and would analyze every inch of myself. And it was not until probably like this past year and a half that I started opening up to some people about it, and like sharing things that I'd never shared with people before. The idea that I remember all through junior high, whenever I was changing in the locker room, like sucking my stomach in, but trying to do it enough that other people wouldn't notice, but enough that it would like make me appear smaller, right? I remember like physically manifesting in me of I remember this a lot, and I remember a picture of myself too. I would always sit kind of with my shoulders hunched in, right? And it was because I was always self-conscious about like my chest, right? And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna hide my chest by having my shoulders in, and actually opening up about that, and the one that I always go back to of like how crazy it is to think about it now, but like this is the literal internal dialogue that I'm having with myself of like, this shoulder's bigger than this other shoulder. And as soon as anything would improve, I would just move on to the next thing that I like didn't like about myself. And then just, it was a constant state of just like picking up things that are in my mind, quote unquote, wrong with me. Right. And I was just, quickly too, of like, I've experienced two fairly significant weight losses in my life. Like one was 40 pounds, one was 50 pounds. And for me, the craziest thing was that I realized I actually didn't feel any different about myself, even in those extremely like weight swings that, from the outside looking in, you can definitely tell the difference, but on the inside, I still see myself the exact same way. And that was really interesting to me. And sorry,
Totally.
you're going to jump in there.
No, I was going to ask about, yeah, I'm assuming there was some weight loss involved, because chubby's not a word anyone would use to describe you now. Was that like 50 and 40 separately? Like, were you like did you lose like 90 pounds?
No, so it was same sort of thing. Like I lost it all, gained it back, and then lost it again. And
Gotcha.
so interesting enough, it's both times it's been because of a somewhat major surgery. The first time was I had shoulder surgery, and I just kind of realized I was like, I'm not going to be moving around. And like this is when I was still playing football, full time. So I was kind of working out all the time, and it's like I'm not going to be able to do anything for 6 months. Like
Hmm.
I am going to blow up if I don't change things, right? And so that's when I lost 50 pounds. And the last one is just like over the past um, essentially like year. And that's when I had my hip surgery. And same sort of thing. Like I know I'm not going to be moving a lot, and it just kind of gave me that extra push. And it was interesting when you were talking, because you said that added stress actually let you work out more, and that's how you get the stress out. But for me, it's like I'm a stress eater for sure, and that's another one that I've had to look at is my relationship with food. Is I eat my feelings, and I say that jokingly a lot of times, but it's true,
You
right?
totally do. I do it. I do it too. I flip flopped. Like I kind of had to essentially rewire my brain to be able to turn stress into exercise. Like I've tried a few times. Like I had a trainer for a bit, a different friend of mine in Calgary here who's a trainer, um, and a friend who used to be a trainer. She tried to build a plan for me, whatever. Like I haven't been able to find that spark again to like really flip flop that mental thing. I definitely stress eat now. There's no question. I'm glad I don't stress drink, because I have endless beer at my disposal at all times. I'm not a stress substance person, which is I'm pretty thankful for. But yeah, I'll definitely stress eat. And now, like, even if we wanted to go to a gym right now, we couldn't. So that's not the best. I do what I can at home to try to keep myself not exponentially growing. Like I've kind of plateaued at where I am. I've hovered around the same weight for a little while. Um, I kind of, part of me is just, I think there's a mental block to not be able to switch back to stress to exercise, because part of me is like, fuck you, world. Like I'm the same. Like part of it is people that are going to gravitate towards me because of who I am are still going to gravitate towards me in this body that I'm in now. And the people that are going to treat me the way I am or treat me well because of who I am are going to do the same. And the kind of people that are going to give me more attention, or listen to me closer, or laugh harder at my jokes because I'm better looking in their eyes. Fuck those people. That's kind of where my head is at. But at the same time, everybody is those people to some extent. So I struggle with that a little bit. And someone shared a post yesterday that was it was like reasons to eat well and exercise other than body image. And it was like increased mental stability, increased memory, increased all these other things. It was like, you know what? Part of me is like, I don't want to go through that process again, that really, really fucking hard process of losing, you know, even to lose 30 pounds is really hard. Like I don't expect to lose 80 again, but to lose like 30 or 40 it's still like a year of hard work. Um, Part of me doesn't want to go through that process again to, stick it to those people. But the other part of me is like, my brain will be infinitely happier with me if I do. So it's an ongoing battle, I guess, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, no, and it's interesting, how much of a difference you noticed in people treating you differently. And I kind of want to go back to that girl, um, and just wondering like if you have done any reflection on that, and like that moment of how shitty of a thing it was for her to say. And at the same time, it being kind of the thing that kicked you off onto the weight loss. Was there any like internal struggle there, or like looking back on it, or like, have you been able to find the silver lining, or, just kind of taking it as it is? Like, what are your thoughts around that at all? If you've reflected on it?
Oh yeah, I reflect on everything. So the best part of it is I still have her on Facebook, and she's an anti-vaxxer and a Trump supporter. So at the end of the day, she's an idiot as far as I'm concerned. So I don't really care what her opinion is. But at the same time, yeah, I definitely sometimes, if I think I never actually thought about it this way, but I think subconsciously I kind of try to think back to that moment, because she was right at the end of the day. Like, yeah, it was a rude thing to say, but she was totally right. And that's how people tend to think, is like, and she was very attractive, in really good shape. So for her to potentially date, or to have people she knows see us kissing in a bar and I'm this like chubby dude, that's a status inequality to her. And I think that's really important to a lot of people. So I think I try to think back to that, not because I really want to replay that lovely moments in my life, but because it just kind of reminds me that, yeah, that's kind of how the vast majority of people think. So I definitely, part of me like wants to thank her for lighting a fire under my ass when she did. Cause like and even then I'd had a couple like rec center memberships and stuff. I'd go to the gym like once every other month kind of thing. Like I'd go for a week and then not go for 2 months kind of thing. Like I'd been dabbling, my toes were wet in the fitness pool. But it was her shitty comment that really made me like kind of the tipping point that was just like, yeah, you know what? Screw this. Like, I don't deserve to be treated like this. And then kind of, yeah, it totally lit a fire. But at the same time, I'm pretty happy that I get to, I would like unfollow somebody like that on Facebook that's like spreading misinformation and toxicity, like with every single one of her posts. But it just kind of like, part of me is just happy that she's such an idiot, because it makes her words like mean way less to me, I guess.
Yeah, no, for sure. And, like for me, just thinking on it right now, it's almost the idea of, it doesn't make it right what she did, but you can still make peace with what it is, right?
Totally.
Making peace with it is different from saying that it's okay or that it's right. Really, as I've kind of dove more into like, my struggles with it and just kind of the whole idea of body image, one of the things that comes to mind for me is like, I would always look at, these fitness models, like guys and girls. And like, whenever I'd hear about something of like, them talking about body image or whatever it might be, I would almost be like, well, fuck you guys. Like, what are you talking about? You're not allowed to talk about that. Like, if that you look exactly like I want to look, or you look like exactly what, I find, would be attractive, or like, physically pleasing, whatever it might be. And I had to do a lot of like internal thinking and reflection on that, and being like, why is that? And for me, what I came to realize, I'm just curious what you think of this, is, the fact that like, body image is, it's not how you actually look, but it's how you feel about the way that you look. I'm just kind of curious what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I 100%. That's a great way to put it. It's I kind of, it took me a while, but yeah, I'm pretty comfortable in the skin that I'm in now, which is another reason why I think I haven't really been able to force myself to go back to the gym. Is I would stress out so much about the way that I look, and I was seeing someone like like 2 years ago, I guess, when I kind of first moved to Calgary, and I was pretty much what I am now. I'm a little heavier now than I was then, but not by much. And she didn't give a fuck. She was in really good shape. She was super attractive. She was I would kind of vent to her about, why how I felt shitty about not being able to find that fifth gear and try to get healthy again. But at the same time, I had someone whose opinion I really, really valued, who I really wanted to feel attractive to. And she was super attracted to me. So it really didn't it kind of made me a little bit more comfortable with my, I don't know, but chubbiness, I guess. Yeah, it was, I put too much stake. I think everybody does a little bit in like how other people see you.
Yeah.
I tend to do that. Everybody does that, I think. Until you kind of, when you find someone that doesn't really care, sees past the weight, I guess, and just sees who you are as a person. Like I'm very comfortable with who I am as a human being. It's and I'd rather fucking eat a burger and have a beer than stress and drive myself crazy over the way over what other people think about me. Like I'm not having burgers and beers every day, but it's I the stress of worrying about it versus the reward of just enjoying the things you like, just to me isn't worth it, I guess.
For sure.
There's certainly days when I'm not able to remind myself that and I feel like shit about it, but there's the majority of days I'm pretty comfortable with the skin I'm in, for sure.
I love that. And I have an interesting one for you, just to see if you have anything that you've experienced like this. And for me, like, over the past year, I decided not to really weigh myself, and because I would get too attached to the number, and so I never did it. And it was interesting though, over like a couple times I have, and I step on the scale, and it's weird where my mind automatically goes like, you're not allowed to be that weight. Like you need to eat more because, you're no longer fulfilling the story that I told about myself. And so for me, it was like stepping on that scale is actually a really negative thing. And it was way better when it was just like, I'm happy with the way that I look. I don't care about the number. And it was just such an interesting thing where, something that could be seen as positive and that most people have no problem with, for me was very detrimental, and it would set me off of just like, oh shit, I'm going to go eat. You know what? Now, like, I'm going to go have burgers 5 days in a row, or I'm going to go have a bunch of beer or whatever it is. And, having to really catch myself on that. I'm just curious if you had any like unique experiences like that you found were either like triggers or just interesting in your mind.
Yeah, I remember. We had a scale. We never had a scale in my house growing up, so it wasn't something I did regularly at all. I'd never owned a scale. The gym I went to obviously had a scale in the bathroom because gyms want to make you feel terrible about yourself, so you keep coming back to the gym, or to track your progress or whatever. Depends on my mood that day when I'm weighing myself. So I would check in on there, but I would only weigh myself on days that I was working out. So it was, and that was when I was working out, minimum 3 times a week. So it was shitty at first to put in some work and be like, oh, nothing's changed. That sucks. And then once things do start changing and you see that number, like once you get to a certain point and your body's metabolism is up, and you're getting more coordinated and getting better at lifting or whatever, like the numbers drops pretty substantially once you reach that really hard point. So it was kind of nice, honestly, to see that and see the difference and see the changes kind of paying off. And then yeah, I got to a point in Toronto. I lived really close to my gym, so I didn't really go in the change room. I would just like put on sweats over my gym shorts and walk over kind of thing. And I never had a scale. So I would work out somewhat, not as frequently as like, at least 3 hours a week, but, a couple times a week for, however long. But I was still active and I was still eating healthy. And a friend of mine had a scale in his condo in Toronto. And I went and I weighed myself on his once. And I was like, I saw the number and I was like, oh, when was the last time you calibrated your scale? He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, there's no way I'm like 180 pounds. He's like, well, yeah, like there is. I'm like, what? like I've never been under like I think it was lower. It was like 174 or something. I was like, I haven't been this weight since I was like in high school, like before that probably. Yeah. And I was like, there's no way this is right. And he's like, yeah, dude. I'm like, oh shit. Like it was, part of me was like stoked, but part of me was like, is this healthy? Like, I thought about, I was stoked because that was below my goal weight. My goal weight was 190 when I was about 250. And then my goal weight was 190. and then I dropped down. I hovered around 250, 255 kind of thing. And then yeah, that was kind of an eye opener in mostly a good way, but also like, oh shit, like am I eating still?
Yeah.
Check yourself. And then I actually, the same thing, like my parents have a scale now. So anytime I'm there still in the coma. So anytime I'm home, I'll check in, and then, but it's like, I'll go 2 months without stepping on a scale. And usually it's around the same, but over the last few months, it's higher than I've ever seen that number before. So that fucks with me a little bit. So I bought a scale for the first time just to try to keep myself in check, I guess. But I'll step on it like once a week kind of thing, tops. And then, yeah, a part of me wants to get into weighing myself every day, just to kind of get that motivator. Like in my head, that number is higher than I want it to be. Part of me doesn't want to become obsessed with it, because I know that feeling too. And I resonate with what you said for sure. So yeah, definitely an interesting relationship with the old weigh machine.
For sure. Yeah. And, I'm such a big fan of essentially, like figuring out what works for you. Right. And it's like, just because this works for somebody else doesn't necessarily mean that it works for you. And it's like, somebody might want to do it every day and have a good relationship, and that keeps them accountable. And then for someone like me, I obsess over it. Right. And so that's why I'm very much just like, figure out and find out what actually works for you. And then do that. Right. Because that's usually what's most sustainable. We're coming to the end here, but a topic that I do want to touch on quickly, kind of going way back, but you talking about the fact that you were going to school to become a brewmaster, and then realizing that you ultimately didn't want to make beer, but you still really loved the industry, right?
Mm.
And that led to you eventually becoming a rep. And why I like that is, one, I find that a lot of people get stuck with like how this is supposed to look, right? Of like, well, I decided I wanted to be a brewmaster, and that's what you're supposed to go do. And then once you actually get there, realizing it's not for you, but having that flexibility and almost playing in that gray zone of like, okay, just because I don't want to be a brewmaster doesn't mean that I hate the industry, I don't want to be a part of the industry, or I can't be a part of the industry. And kind of pivoting and still finding something that was within the same field, but something that you enjoyed a lot more. And just maybe how you came to that decision, what made you realize it, and just kind of how you navigated that, and of instead of completely walking away from it, you found where you fit within the industry.
Yeah, it was. I kind of realized partway through the first year of school that I liked I knew I liked the industry. I knew I liked craft beer. Like even when I was a kid, when I started drinking beer, yeah, was basically a kid. I thought I didn't like beer because I'd have one of my dad's Coors Lights, or I'd have a Budweiser at a bar, and I'd be like, this sucks. Like, give me a rum, give me something that is not gross. And then, yeah, it was, as much as like Keith's isn't an IPA, it was my kind of gateway into actual IPAs. And then Guinness was my gateway into dark beer. And I just kind of fell in love with like, oh, like this is really good. And then when I lived in Toronto, how many times can I say Toronto in a podcast, Jared? The liquor store system sucks there. Like you can't on most days get beer from a store past 9 or 10 p.m. Okay. And on Sundays it's past 5 or 6 p.m. So it was living close to a brewery that did off sales that really got me into craft beer. It's when I discovered like growler fills. That was, I can't get beer at the store, but if I biked out of this brewery, I can fill a growler. And I was like, oh, cool. How many other of these places are near me? And then I kind of just fell in love with the kind of the independent entrepreneurial spirit, and like the kind of the artisticness that comes with building a brand and crafting these different beers. Like I fell in love with that way more than I liked the idea of actually like working in a brewery and making beer. Mm-hmm. And I just kind of saw where the beer industry in Toronto or in Ontario in general and Quebec was versus it had kind of just started in Alberta. the first time I came home from Christmas is the first time I went to any brewery in Alberta, which was Blind Man. I used to hang out with the same friends around Christmas every and I swear I am building up to answer your question, but every year around Christmas we would kind of bar hop and go bowling, because that's all there is to do in Macomb. Go to the 3 bars and then go bowling. And then they were like, yeah, we're gonna go to Ugly's, and then we're gonna go to the brewery, and then we're gonna go to this bar, and then we're gonna go bowling. I was like, what? There's a freaking brewery here? So then I yeah, that was the first time I tried Blind Man and toured it and stuff, and then kind of realized that, oh, like all this beer scene that's happening in Ontario is like being born here right now. And there's a pretty cool opportunity to get into something that's, I thought was about to explode. I mean, it wasn't hard to see that it was about to explode. So I kind of, like I said, applied, got in my head. I've always, and part of me still does, even though 2020 kind of scared me away from it. But part of me still wants to open a bar / music venue, even though I don't think I ever will, because it harkens back to meeting comedians and seeing how kind of crazy and stressed they all are. Look at every bar owner right now. I love them all, but I don't want to be in their shoes at all. So, and then I kind of realized that like they kind of tell you at Olds that they're going to teach you everything in the industry, from brewing to sales to everything else, including running a brew pub. And we spent like half an hour one day talking about running a brew pub. So it's like, cool. Like that's not going to help me at all. It was way more focused on the beer and the brewing, which is awesome. But it comes back to my mind doesn't naturally take to brewing. I've never really been a chef. I can cook at home and whatever, but I cook on my own pace and play around and stuff. I'm a slow moving person just in general. So it's like to just make beer is fine, but to make beer while you're brewing, which is, anywhere from like a 5 to 8 hour process minimum, really, 5 minimum. While you're brewing, you're transferring this beer from this tank to another, and you're cleaning this tank as soon as that's done, and you have to have this done by the time you brew, and then you have to, it was doing a lot of things physically at once, and a lot of like mechanical troubleshooting. Brewing is 90% cleaning and like 10% brewing, honestly. And I had just been a dishwasher for like a year and a half. So I was very, very over cleaning. It felt like like you're warehousing and doing like, and you're seeing the same 4 or 5 faces in the back of a brewery every single day. Whereas I'd worked customer service most of my life. I'd worked a lot of retail and worked in kitchens where tons of like big kitchens where a lot of people are coming and going at all times, kind of thing. And honestly, part of it is sales pays a lot better than making beer does, for sure. Unless you're owning your brewery or you're like a head brewmaster somewhere, which takes a long time to work up to. It's not really something that you're ever gonna own a house or be able to support a family with. Yeah, there's perks. You get free beer for life. That's great. But you get those same perks and can make a lot more money doing sales. And honestly, like, shocker, I like to talk. So I'd rather be like with people and around people. And, a work day for me literally can be, might have a couple meetings, or I will have a few meetings and stopping at this store, do whatever. But also it's meeting new people and spending time in bars and building relationships with people. And, it's half of being a sales rep, it's just kind of making friends and then trying to get those friends to sell your beer, really. And it's been able to grow into, organizing, festivals or events and charity events and doing collaborations with other breweries and just kind of being part of the community. That's what I loved about the craft beer industry. It wasn't the hanging out in the back of a brewery playing with stainless steel and chemicals all day. So that it was kind of that. I honestly, I thought about dropping out of the program when I kind of realized that. And then I had a conversation with one of my professors there who at the end of the year, I was like, I'll be honest, Jordan Ramey, hi. I'll be honest, Jordan, I'm kind of debating not coming back next year because half of next year is dedicated to perfecting a beer recipe, and doing a project based around a brewery that you would hypothetically open.
Yeah.
And I don't want to do either of those things. So you tell me why I should come back.
Yeah.
And he was basically asked me what I wanted to do. And I told him, something with people in the community, sales, events, marketing, whatever. He's like, cool, we'll just switch your final project to be about that instead. Like, cool. And I was like, okay, rad. Like it was that conversation. And then, a conversation with the taproom manager at the brewery I was working at in Red Deer too. She was a friend first, but was the taproom manager there, my friend Lisa. And I just kind of was having a shitty day and vented and told her I was debating not coming back. And she kind of calmed me down a little bit and was just like, dude, finish it. Like no one's going to hire you at all if you don't show that you finish this. Like at least, even if you're not going to do what the program really teaches you to do for the most part, it's still going to show somebody that like you can commit to something and finish it. So she kind of lit a fire under my ass to still finish it out, and Jordan helped me kind of adapt. And then I put on a couple pretty successful events while I was part of the program that kind of, I guess, made people know who I am, I guess. And I went to events and I talked to anybody. So that ended up opening up the opportunity that I got with Blind Man.
Awesome. No, I love that story. And, I always love hearing how people got to where they are now. Right. And
the journey,
exactly. So, as we wrap up here, I'm just curious, is there anything we didn't get to that you want to talk about or anything like that?
No, I don't think so, man. I mean, I could talk all day about whatever. So I'm not sure if you do returning guests, but this flew by. I'd come back and talk about other stuff if you want. But yeah, awesome. Nothing I'm dying to get off my chest or anything. No.
Awesome. No, I'd love that. It flew by for me too. It's crazy. I looked down, I was like, holy shit, like we're almost done. So, where would be the best place for people to connect with you if they're curious?
Probably Instagram.
Okay.
I'm just at Trevor WJAY TREVOR WJAY on Instagram. And then if anyone wants my email, they can ask for it there, I guess.
Awesome. Sounds good. I'll make sure I put that in the notes. And final question for you is, what does this next phase of your journey look like?
That's a tough question. And I keep wanting to say 2020, but that's a really tough question in 2021 even. I think there's, assuming the world's going to get a little bit back to normal at some point, that's really when I kind of picturing the future. It's a future where things aren't so dooming all the time.
Yeah.
Some travel for sure. I was supposed to be in the States and Ontario last year to do some traveling kind of sales trips, I guess. So
okay.
It's fun sales trips and work trips with some pleasure involved for sure. Work-wise, it's that. I want to start playing a lot more music. I've been obviously had a lot of downtime the last few months and going forward. So there's going to be a lot more music in my life is kind of the main thing I want to work towards, whether that's, I'm not going to start like a band that I think is going to, be a full-time thing again. That's a road I'm probably not going down. I would, for fun for sure. But, I've been playing a lot of, I bought a drum kit, like an electric drum kit as well. So I've been playing drums, bass, and guitar and piano, and I kind of want to be writing and recording, whether it's my own covers or my own songs, where I'm just playing everything. Yeah. So that's on the horizon, I think here. It's pretty tough to look forward right now for sure with the way the world is right now, but it's I see myself with the same company, the same title, I guess, with some more responsibilities and more facets to it as things progress. But for the most part, drinking beer, making music.
Awesome. Thanks again for doing this. Had an amazing conversation. We'll definitely have to get you on again soon. And we'll connect. We'll connect soon. Okay.
Sounds great, Jared. Thanks for having me on.